Hello, Dr. Lawrence. So, I decided to do my presentation on Native American sports by me, Christian Almapino. So, a brief history. So, sports have always been part of the Native American culture for many years, and they still are now. There's many sports that they've participated in, including canoeing, snowshoeing, tobogganing, relay races, tug of war, ball games, lacrosse. Those are just a few of the sports that they had. And if you look at the pictures that I put here, lacrosse, which I'll talk about later. And then these are all the canoeing and snowshoeing and tobogganing and all those other sports. So let's get into it. So one of the first sports I'd like to talk about is football. Um, so Native Americans, while they didn't invent the game of football, they still had a big help transforming the game of it. So at the turn of the 20th century, when universities dominated football, there was a lieutenant called Colonel Richard Henry Pratt who started a team called the Carlisle Indians, which I have right here. And that was pretty much the first ever Native American football team. And for Native Americans, they were often very small compared to all the other teams. So they had to rely on their trick plays, which were which they're not trick plays now, but they were back in the day when football was just getting going, like the overhand spiral pass, which is just a regular pass today. They actually helped invent that, and the forward pass, because back then it was pretty much just run the ball. So they had a pretty big impact on transforming the game to what we know it as today. And another person that's huge in the football community, Jim Thorpe. Um, Many people know about him, but not many people know his history and what he did for the game. Um, so he's one of the most accomplished football players ever, especially as an Indian. Um, he played professional football. He played professional baseball too, and went on to the Olympics for it. And so he played American football from 1919 to 1926, and he is in the Hall of Fame for football. And he had a winning percentage of 65%. Um, Up until playing till his last year in pro football. And so that placed him in the Hall of Fame. And as a Native American, that's to be one of the first Native Americans to be in the Hall of Fame. That's a huge stepping stone, and it pretty much set the path for the rest of football up until now. There was also a team called the Hominy Indians, which was an all Indian football team. This is actually a picture of them right here on the screen. And they played in the 1920s to 30s. Obviously, it's not a team anymore because you don't have to put up now football. Anyone can play wherever. You don't have to have a team just for Indians. There's no more segregation or anything like that. But this team was based out of Hominy, Oklahoma, with players from two different tribes. I can't remember the names of the tribes, but they were state champions. The way they did it back in the day is there were state champions, and then you'd go on to play a national championship. But this team were the state champions of Oklahoma in 1925. And in 1927, they defeated the NFL world champions, which were the New York Giants. So this was a pretty great team, and again, laid the path for everyone else. Moving on. Basketball, which we now call it today, another sport. The sport's name has changed over the past couple of years. Not well, really for Indians, because they were playing it before it was basketball. And while they didn't invent basketball, they played this game called it was just called the ball game when they were playing it. And it was the same goal, get a ball through a hoop, and that's how you win. And whoever puts the ball in the hoop the most times wins a game. So they were playing that. The game was tied to mythology and religion for some weird reason. And with there were like legends of gods and ancient kings competing in the games, and I'm not really sure how that worked, but most of their, as we'll move on, lacrosse was also, we'll get into that, but they, a lot of their sports were tied to all religion and mythology. And the captain, a fun fact, the captain of the losing team was subject to a religious sacrifice. So if you lose and you're the captain of the winning team, you're dead. You're being sacrificed, which I found that pretty crazy. In the modern game, it also has roots tied back to indigenous history because James Naismith, name right there, he wasn't Indian, but he invented basketball, if you wanna, the real basketball game. He was a Canadian American, and he invented it in 1891, and founded University of Kansas, actually, their basketball team. And often hit that team that he founded would play a nearby team called the Haskell Indian Nations University, and they would play all the time because there wasn't much competition back in the day because people were still trying to get their own basketball teams created and whatnot. So today, now that in present day, they call it res ball, which is pretty much a faster paced game of basketball the Indians play and Native Americans play. And so it's like their own twist of the game. It's much fast paced than the traditional game, and it's been a defining feature pretty much for the Native Americans to have their own identity for their reservation and stuff. And also, many American Indians have gravitated to basketball as a means to get together and overcome their problems, just work things out, escape, and it's just a great game to play. And you see a bunch of Native Americans now in the NBA because like I said, same with football. It's not segregated anymore. There's no more rate. Well, there's trying to be no more racism, but nothing's ever perfect. But we can move on from basketball now to lacrosse. So lacrosse is actually invented by indigenous tribes. Like this is their game, and now it's a global sport. It was originally called stickball, but this is their sport. They invented it, and this is like their, how do I say this? This was their official sport. Yeah, this is their official sport, and you could actually see how much it was originally called stickball, and you could see in the picture on the left that's what their lacrosse sticks used to look like, which were just these long poles. They were all different shapes and sizes with these nets that they would weave like we've done in class, but they would weave it onto the stick, and you get the ball. And so that their game wasn't wasn't like lacrosse today. You see those sticks, but those sticks really just, I mean, that's just like the smaller part of it. These lacrosse games, they weren't games. Like this lacrosse, they had a nickname for it called Little Brother of War. And these games would get crazy. There would be up to 100,000 people playing at one time. And some would prepare their warriors for combat. Like they would get in combat ready, like they were going to war just to play some lacrosse. And others just participated for religious reasons. Um, like I said, um, they thought they took this game of lacrosse like it was a gift from the creator. That's what they thought it was. And they used it for a bunch of spiritual reasons, one of them being to heal the sick. Now, I'm not really sure how that correlates, but how playing lacrosse heals the sick, but we don't really ask questions like that. But French missionaries in the 1630s coined the term lacrosse after being the first Europeans to witness Native Americans playing the game. And then lacrosse rapidly grew popularity after that, and by 1860, it was declared the national game in Canada. So not only was it made by the Native Americans, but they, shared it with the rest of the world, and now it's this huge game, and it's really a great game to play. Um, this is my works cited, and that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. I'm gonna